Hi, I'm Giuseppe Incarnato, Chairman and CEO IGI Investimenti Group. Welcome to Private Equity Lesson 8595. The Italian market mainly relies on small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs. To better understand the weight of SMEs within the Italian economic and production framework, it is good to linger on the numbers. Out of 4 million active enterprises in Italy, microenterprises with fewer than 10 employees are numerically the most important ones, representing 95.05% of the total, against 0.09% of large enterprises. On the other hand, Italian SMEs are about 206,000, i.e., the remaining 86% of the Italian entrepreneurial market, and are responsible, alone, for 41% of the entire turnover generated in Italy, for 33% of the total number of employees in the private sector and 38% of the country's added value. Looking then at productivity, it emerges that Italian SMEs are doing well. They generate an added value well above the €48,000 per employee of the European average. The same cannot be said for large and micro enterprises, where the Italian scenario is far from the European average values. For all these reasons, therefore, SMEs have all the credentials to be able to give impetus to the Italian economic and territorial development, also thanks to the increasing support provided by private equity investors. Making a comparison with the Italian scenario, based on the parameters analyzed in the previous paragraph, we note how the impact of private equity on Italian companies is mostly positive. From a study provided by AIFI in 2020, regarding ESG parameters related to private capital activity in Italy, it emerges that the average annual growth in the number of employees is elevated in buyout, plus 111%, and replacement operations, plus 54%, while it is lower in growth capital operations, plus 11%, and negative in turnaround interventions, minus 9%. However, the average number of employees has increased overall by 89%. Referring, instead, to innovation supported by private equity companies, a study carried out by the LEUC University in collaboration with AIFI, with the aim of analyzing the ability to induce innovation by measuring the filing of new patents and trademarks, shows how the patenting activity of private equity-backed firms, in the sample taken into consideration, is higher than the Italian average, 27% against 5% of the reference benchmark. In absolute terms, it is the targets of the buyout operations that file the most patents. The companies that show a greater propensity for innovation are concentrated in the manufacturing and large-scale distribution sectors. Moreover, according to the study, the majority of companies that file post-investment patents are those that have patented even before the investment. In relative terms, growth capital operations are those that file the most patents, 24% compared to 18% of buyout operations. Finally, to analyze the impact of private equity on the support related to the internationalization of companies, reference is made to a study conducted by the LEUC University, again in collaboration with AIFI, which studies a sample consisting of 833 growth capital and buyout operations, carried out between 2006 and 2015 in Italian companies. The research states that in 82% of transactions, private equity contributed to improving internationalization processes. Among the companies not yet internationalized, during the holding period 45% of them decided to enter foreign markets. The preferred internationalization strategies are the opening of an office abroad, the search and contracting of agents or distributors, and M&A. In 82% of cases, the targets increased the weight of foreign turnover during the holding period, mainly using the opening of an office abroad as a strategy. Instead, the companies that have carried out M&A activities, mainly SMEs operating in the industrial and consumer goods sectors, have carried out on average almost 2 transactions each, favoring the acquisition of competitors. 79 The benefits brought by the private equity target operator partnership on the Italian market also clearly emerge from a study conducted by the Bank of Italy and AIFI in 2009, carried out by collecting information relating to 57 transactions. The results indicate that the operators provided support mainly on financial aspects and on the definition of strategies. They also played a certification role, facilitating the collection of funds from other lenders and improving relations with banks. On the contrary, the contribution in terms of technical product development, human resource management, marketing policies, and improved access to suppliers and distributors is reduced. To further explore the impact that private equity funds have on the performance of target companies, it is necessary to mention some research carried out in the past years. A recent study called The Economic Impact of Private Equity and Venture Capital in Italy, carried out by PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, in March 2018, shows that companies owned by private equity or venture capital funds have performed better than other Italian companies in terms of revenues from sales and services, EBITDA, and employment. This research took into account a sample of 499 disinvestments, of which 218 of venture capital, also including growth capital, and 281 of buyout, carried out in Italy from 2008 to 2018. Within the study, the performances are indicated through the average of the CAGRs, compound annual growth rate, recorded by each company included in the sample and then compared with the reference benchmark. The analysis revealed that the companies owned by private equity and venture capital funds were characterized by an annual growth in revenues of 5%, about 4 times more than the Italian companies taken as benchmarks, 3%. This growth rate was significantly higher than the growth of the Italian gross domestic product, which stood at around 0.7%. As regards the employment rate, unlike the positive but stationary 0% recorded in the reference sample, the companies in which private equity operators have an interest recorded an annual increase of 1%. In detail, analyzing the venture capital operations, data shows that the companies involved in the investment were characterized by a growth rate of revenues equal to 2%, against 4% of the reference sample. Similarly, the growth in terms of EBITDA was 14.8%, compared to 0.8% of the benchmark. Even taking into consideration the data of the same study, however, referring only to buyout operations, the values are positive. In fact, the annual growth in revenues of the companies invested by private equity operators was 4%, against 3% of the reference benchmark. The most significant data concerns the annual growth of the EBITDA of the companies under study, which stood at 4%, compared to 0.7% of the benchmark. A study conducted by the LAUC University in January 2014 called The Economic Impact of Private Equity in Made in Italy, examines the private equity transactions carried out in Italy from 2007 to 2012, excluding investments made by public operators, those addressed to startups and secondary buyouts.